People don't understand you anymore because you are not you. So they don't feel the same connection. They don't feel the same balance that they create in your life because your ego is gone. The identity as you is no longer the same once you've had that spiritual awakening. So relationships naturally will change. They will become something else. So you might be feeling this overwhelming sense of exhaustion, like social tiredness, a lack of a desire for social interactions. You might have been completely extroverted and that's transformed into you becoming a complete introvert after you've had the spiritual awakening. Because relationships don't serve the same purpose in your energy, and whatever ego or subconscious contract that they signed with you, to keep balance is now out. The universe is always trying to create balance. So in its search for balance, what it will do is use certain people to counter certain parts. So if you have a heavy side of ego, it will bring someone with an equal and opposite force to help you ask the right questions to make the internal shift, which is what's brought you to this spiritual awakening that you've had. Now, the universe wanting balance is now going to shift those relationships when you're no longer on the scale. When you've gotten off of this need to constantly have an ego battle to ultimately destroy itself, that version of you has now been fulfilled, and the new soulful, spiritual, or lighter version is there. And that version of you now needs to tip the scale and help on the other side of the relationship. The universe wants everybody to wake up. It wants everybody to have the realization that there is so much more than this mundane, basic, simple life that I've been living. I have so much more to give and to create. I'm a spiritual being. The universe wants everybody to see that. It wants everybody to realize their true nature. So you will become a catalyst in that by creating a scenario in them that will spark that same interest. And that's why you are misunderstood, socially tired, distant, have no desire to maintain relationships after the awakening, because you know that it's now going to be a different dynamic. And they can feel that. Maybe they don't know it, but they can feel it. So from their end, they're just looking at you. They are just looking at you and you are a person. But from your end, as a spiritually awakened person, they are a mirror. And this is why there's a lack of understanding, because you are about to learn more about yourself and they are about to learn more about themselves. I had a friend who was really well-rounded. Like, everything about his energy was always in the best place. He always had the best intention. Nobody would ever need to question that. And I found it very interesting how in his nature of kindness, the ego was so strong. And the way it got to him was through the fear of things, the fear of failure, the fear of addiction, the fear of messing up. So what he did was stay this caged, perfect behaved person so that those things didn't happen. And like Jordan Peterson says, that there is no virtue in someone being kind if they have the inability to not be kind. So the virtue comes from the choice. Now, he was stuck in this realm of being a strong individual, but could never use it because of the fear of consequence. And it was always very interesting to me to understand that dynamic, to understand why he was that way. And after I had my spiritual awakening, I understood that it was all fear-based. And so what happened is he started to shift, and he then had an awakening 4 years after I did. He was the first person I ran to with my awakening to try and tell him this cool information I had just learned. But he wasn't ready then. And he was kind of like, he kept arguing every point. He wasn't sure about it. He didn't quite feel it, but he was curious. And that curiosity was the new dynamic shift. I was being understood from a different angle. I was very much somebody who needed to be heard at a party, who needed to be the light of the party. I needed to be in the center of attention to feel that I had any worth. So I became good at speaking. Unconsciously became really good at telling stories so that people would naturally gravitate to my storytelling and not me as a person. And I never ever felt that validation. And now I've had this awakening, and he knew that I was someone who needed validation. And part of him wanted to serve that, to be a good friend. And what it did was create this dynamic of like uncertainty. He was serving an ego bridge between us. And I had my awakening. 4 years later, he had his awakening, and now our relationship has changed. But in that transition period, there was a lot going on, and I definitely felt misunderstood because I felt I had reached a newer or deeper, more expanded version of reality, and I couldn't understand how he didn't see that. It was a lot of learning, and this is what starts to happen is you realize that they are a reflection. Now, what you can do with this information is turn it into your next lesson. But what happens is you come out feeling this need for validation, this FOMO, like that's part of the connection, this want or desire to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. And this is initially what they agreed to being a part of in your story. They agreed to meet these needs. So what happens is these all fall away, and now you're a soulful being, and they don't know what they have to offer anymore energetically, because you've realized that this is all a reflection. But what this does is create that balance in the universe where it's ultimately after everybody waking up and realizing the ultimate truth, the spiritual awakening. And because you've shifted, they start to ask these questions. Now, what is my purpose in this relationship? I don't quite get them anymore. They might sort of think like things are different since they've become all esoteric. They might not have the good side of this. Now, you've got to understand, every person is given a choice energetically once someone around them has an awakening. They can either join on that path and grow together by asking these questions and wanting to find a more true answer, or they will rather take the call of the ego saying, don't worry about them, they've changed, they're all hippie now, and they start to sort of cast you aside because you don't quite fit the idea that they had. And that makes them someone who struggles with change. So that is another ego battle they've got to go. But your presence will make them ask the questions that they need to change and spiritually grow. So what's happening in this whole story is you are going to learn new lessons from the way that they react, because it's a reflection. You know that this is a version of you, and you start to listen to this reflection. You start to hear what's going on and be like, well, why are they behaving out of fear? Okay, what am I still doing out of fear? And you can turn this into an introspective investigation of you to figure out what lesson is next. And that's how you're going to shift now, because they're a reflection, because you know this, you're going to start internalizing and going, wow, what about me can change? And what they're going to do is start the same process, just maybe a little bit after you. What is my purpose in this friendship anymore? Why are they so different? If there's genuine care and love within this relationship, friendship, whatever it is, connection, their care and their love is what's going to want them to ask more questions to understand. They want to understand you. Their soul is knocking on the ego's door saying, phone that friend who's all weird now, phone them, because the universe wants them to get more out of you. I had a few friends who were just very curious about this change, why I was no longer so in need of validation, or why I no longer had to get everyone's approval. My friends and I'm lucky to be part of a friend group who's always been very open with each other, and we don't really take anything to heart, but that allows us to be very honest. So they were like, you've changed, you're no longer a dick. You no longer want to be the life of the party and everyone has to focus on you. And actually the way that my soul was knocking on my door with my ego was through my best friend's girlfriend, who did not like me. She didn't like me, and she never ever directly said what she had an issue with, but she told my friend and he told me. And it was that I had to be the center of attention. And I never thought about it. And in my ego state, I was like, who the hell does she think she is? And what that created later down the line was a complete recognition that she was seeing in me what she possessed. I just did it better. So I could get everyone's attention better than she could. And she resented me for having this ego thing that she had, this need for validation, but I was better at getting the validation. And so what all happens in being understood as your new spiritual self is by realizing that things have changed. You've gone to the next grade. You've upgraded. It's a new level, new lessons. You've got a new purpose. And finding and defining this new purpose is quite difficult, but I'm going to give you something that's going to really help you. And in finding your purpose, your relationships will change. People will understand you better because you're going to be a better representation of your true self. In fact, they're going to understand you more than they ever had. And you won't even have to explain yourself. You will just be. So if you want to see a video going into detail on discovering this new purpose, on understanding what your next thing to do is, and I break it down into steps like this video of being understood, leave this video a like, and that way I know that kind of content will resonate for you. Then I know that video is something you definitely want to see. But this new purpose is outlined by 3 main areas. The first part, number 1, is to love that new love within you above all. That love, that new part of you is everything. That new realization of that feeling of goodness and greatness and that feeling of love is the first step. That is step 1. You have to do that through everything to understand your purpose. Next, after you've decided that love is all that matters, realize that is in everyone and love it in them the same way you love it within yourself. You love that feeling. So that's step 2, in others. You love that feeling in them. And as you love that feeling in them, they feel a sense of forgiveness. They feel a sense of permission to be themselves because the ego doesn't work to get your attention. And this is the most important part. Follow your authentic passion. That is your new purpose. That has always been your purpose, but now it is clear. Now pursuing your heart, feeling your truth, your ambition, your passion is now the purpose to fulfill. I myself love music. I create music. This is my studio that I'm recording the video in. And in the studio is where I get to not only dive into my spiritual topics in complete peace and quiet, like this is my space, but at the same time, I get to dive into my music. And I allow passion to drive me. Making these videos, I'm deeply passionate about this topic. So doing this is an absolute gift. And I find that when one person says this video resonates with me, when one person asks one question on a video, I feel great. My passion and my purpose are being realized and recognized, and I get to live in that. And observing that is the best thing ever. So just understand that their entire nature, the friends, are going to shift and understand that you are feeling better without them anymore. You don't need their energy investment to feel good anymore. You've learned how to energetically invest in yourself. And they are going to be curious. And if they can, if the relationship means enough, they're going to start asking the questions that are going to bring them up to that level. That's the reason for the misunderstanding. You're just further apart now. Not in a bad way, not in a good way. You're just a different energy, a different frequency. And you can imagine, if I'm standing on top of a hill trying to scream something to you, the likelihood of you hearing every word and understanding it is a lot less, as opposed to being right next to you. So once you spiritually elevate and you get on that hilltop, your message becomes more difficult. So they need to get closer to you to understand you. And that's what the questions are going to start to do for them, is make them curious about getting closer to you. That's the dynamics that's shifted. And you can see it as a new lesson, as a reflection, and a guide to your new purpose. I hope this video has resonated. And if it has, and you feel called to leave a comment or leave a question, I love chatting in these comment sections. I love to engage with you guys. So just know I will reply. And if you really like this content and want to see the next video, just make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new uploads. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Mad love and light.